Clayton tells all. Well, today I'll do a little intro. Today we have Clayton Blaha, head of partnerships at Audius. You know, glad to have met you, Clayton, during the pandemic. I know our first phone call, you started telling me about Audius, and it was like pretty much, I don't know, like a different language. Didn't make any sense to me. And I was just really trying to follow, and I'm sure you deal with that a lot, in your day to day, but
Full time.
um yeah, over like the last, since then and up to now, I know Payne and I have both gone through our respective Web3, crypto, NFT rabbit holes in general. And I've come to a much larger understanding of what's happening in this space. So, we're excited to have you here to talk about some of that stuff. And we can give a little background on just who you are, if you don't mind doing like a 2-minute intro. And then we can dive on it.
Yeah, dude, super happy to be here. And thank you for making time and having me. Quick background is I'm a skateboarder from Idaho. I've started working in the music industry as a freelance rap journalist for Thrasher magazine back in 2005. Kind of used that to jump into publicity. Started working on a bunch of different clients from everybody, working on PR campaigns for everybody from Daft Punk to Freddie Gibbs to, LP, ASAP Mob, stuff like that. And then also met a guy who was a dubstep producer back in 2010 named Skrillex. And that was before anybody really knew who he was, but we kind of linked really early. And he then won 8 Grammys, and I was fortunate enough to co-found a record label with him and then run his publishing company for a while. Then I started my own management company where I developed artists that ultimately ended up signing to Interscope and Atlantic Records, respectively. And I still manage a singer-songwriter in Atlantic who's multi-platinum and Grammy nominated guy named Matt Maeson. But through all of that, I kind of became really, really aware of the fact that the music industry is fucked up on a systemic level that like most other multi-billion-dollar industries aren't. And it became pretty evident that there's like inefficiencies in the music industry that are exploited to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars at the expense of creatives, and in many cases, Black creatives. And I became pretty upset with with the fact that I was kind of beholden to this system, no matter how many people want to change or want to help people, as musicians. We're really kind of hamstrung by the idea of this entire industry being essentially kind of pushed around and bullied by multi-billion-dollar publicly traded companies like Spotify. So in 2018, I kind of started to step away from the traditional music industry, and that's when 2017 is when I found Ethereum. Kind of started to realize that it was going to be a key that could unlock a lot of the inequities and like a lot of the like kind of start to dismantle a lot of the power structures within music. So I was a partner in the first streaming. I started consulting and working with a lot of like pretty big clients, telling them about decentralization broadly and how this technology could affect their business and where this was all going. Very few people listened, but Mark Gillespie at 360, who manages Calvin Harris, brought me into the first streaming platform built on Ethereum. It was called Tune. That went pretty well. I mean, we crossed 50,000 monthly active users, but the technology wasn't scalable at that point. There was a huge lack of talent in terms of engineers that were willing to take the risk of like diving in and building products on a completely unproven a new iteration of the internet, especially in music, because music tech is notoriously music tech is very difficult. So that went away in 2018, and then in 2019 Audius came down to LA, the two founders, and were like, hey, you're probably the only person that kind of gets this and has the appetite for risk that is necessary for us to kind of start building this. And we launched it in September of 2019. And that was a public launch. And as of like a couple of weeks ago, we crossed 6.5 million monthly active users, which makes us the fastest growing music streaming platform in the world. And definitely the largest consumer decentralized application on earth as well.
Damn. So you've been with Audius since the public launch.
Yeah, since before the public launch. I started in like July of 2019, and then we launched in September.
Amazing.
It's incredible. Um, in your when you first found Ethereum, how long did it take you, or was that just like an initial feeling or instinct of like, yo, this is more than just like um a program where I could like invest in, and like it could be something more than just like me just putting money in it? When did it become like, yo, this is actually something that like I think can really change the world and definitely change music? Like, how long did it take you to make that shift?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm pretty unique in this because like I think most people I know that got into Ethereum early got in because it was like a vast improvement on Bitcoin in terms of
Yeah.
transaction timing and things like that. Like so like the idea of like cryptocurrency as a speculative asset, like I had heard about Bitcoin. I had never even heard about Ethereum until some people approached me about a ticketing company because I had been an advisor of a couple tech startups. There primarily one that ended up exiting to Eventbrite more recently, but it was called Tone Den. It was I had been on since there was two founders there. I was very early for that, and they grew to about 50 employees. And I was just an advisor for them, and I was pretty public about it. It was on my LinkedIn or whatever. So a mutual friend introduced me to a guy who was doing a ticketing company that was built on Ethereum, and I had no idea what Ethereum was, but he explained to me what smart contracts were and how you could monetize its secondary and tertiary market, and how split payments could happen on chain, and everything was transparent and actionable like instantly or fairly instantly, as compared to like credit card transactions and all these other kinds of things. And that was when I was like, holy shit, like this is crazy. Like this is like, for example, like I had been working in publishing, and splits are just a nightmare. Like first of all, they're agreed upon. Half of it, most of the time, it's handshake until it gets to the lawyers, and then eventually you there's sometimes a litigious period, and sometimes it's just very easy. But essentially, like the metadata is what ultimately the metadata that's taken in by distributors and is reported back to collections rights collections agencies like RIAA, or I mean, excuse me, like ASCAP and BMI. Like all of that is essentially like file cabinets and fucking
It's the most
stapled
archaic
paperwork.
system
It makes
in the world,
none of it makes any fucking sense. And I was like, this could disintermediate and like solve such massive issues in rights management stuff. And so I started kind of looking into that more, and then I had realized that a lot of other people had that same realization, many of whom didn't actually even work in the music industry in the same capacity that I did. D.A. Wallach, probably one of the earliest thinkers about how rights management could happen on chain, wrote a piece. I don't know where it was published. It might have just been a blog post called Bitcoin for Rockstars, and that was in 2015. And he kind of pursued that. He was in a group called Chester French that was signed to Pharrell. He's also a Harvard grad and like just one of the smartest people in music. He was too smart for the music industry, essentially. And that's why he probably doesn't work in it, probably why he doesn't work in it anymore. But he wrote a paper called Bitcoin for Rockstars, where he like basically pontificates on all of this kind of thing and proposes that this could be, if there is some sort of global rights, consensus on like who owned what and how it would be taken, how it would be essentially attributed on a blockchain, how this could, solve major issues. And it just never worked out because you can't get, it's basically the music industry is so completely there's so many different aspects of it in so many different countries that like getting any sort of like total consensus among many hundreds of thousands of, if not millions, of rights holders was basically proven to be impossible.
You're saying because you're saying because like the way that the music business and the administration of like royalties, streaming, publishing is all different, has different set of laws in different countries, different agencies. Yeah,
it's totally fragmented. And you know, it's impossible to get two songwriters who work on a song to fucking agree on anything, let alone, you know, they're publishing companies who don't even speak the same language.
Yeah.
So this kind of thing didn't work out. But to get back to Payne's point, I hadn't even thought about investing in Ethereum at that point. Like I was just like, oh, this is going to change the music industry. And I had worked, you know, I was a beta tester for Napster when I was 14 or 15. I had been, for whatever reason, I was fortunate enough to like be exposed very early to the earliest like applications of music to personal computing and technology, like from Fruity Loops beta to like you know, Kazaa, Soulseek, fucking LimeWire, everything that came down, like all
So you've
the
always
fucking,
been passionate about like technology and music.
it was the only way I really understood the music. Yeah, it was like I didn't really like, I had owned every instrument growing up, like keyboards, fucking drum set, bass, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, classical guitar, trumpet, and nothing made sense until I got Fruity Loops, and then I was like, oh, I get this. I understand how to do this. And then that's why I started making music, and then I started like, you know, needing stuff to sample, and I was like, okay, where am I gonna find like a jazz record? I'm get it on my computer. I'll just go, you know, figure out some place on the internet to find it. And so yeah, I only ever really known about understood the music industry through a digital lens. And then yeah, Ethereum just made sense. But then it occurred to me that there was like a lot of people that were really interested in speculating about the price of Ethereum and tokens on top of it. But I was super late to that, and I frankly it doesn't interest me as much. I mean, I definitely do trade. I think many people do, but like for me, and I think this is evident in the way that Audius has manifested itself in the industry and in both industries, in the music industry as well as like Web3. It's like we're not really thinking about 5 to 6 month horizons so much as we are like 10 to 15 to 20 years. Like I really do think what we're doing and the technology that's been built by a fucking world-class team, and just the vision that we all have for how deeply this can impact people, individuals, as well as systems, is like, it's a very, very long road. So we kind of have our blinders on in reference to a lot of what happens, you know, in the month to month and day to day, which, you know, is like less exciting for some people than, you know, a lot of things that happen in crypto, but ultimately I think it's going to be a lot more not only lucrative but like impactful for everybody that's a part of the community.
Yeah, your story is definitely different than mine for sure, because because I first started with looking at a financial lens, and then eventually I got to a place where I turned into a geek and a nerd and was like, yo,
Yeah.
now this can really change the world. You know, this is like, then I started like really like being in a space with a purpose and with intent, and it started making me happy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you can go
like,
super.
oh, this is a life work.
Yeah, and like the cool thing about music is that like technology tends to affect the way people consume music or create music way before it does in other types of media, let alone other kinds of industries. I mean, like I think, you know, obviously crypto has been the earliest, you know, industry that it began to disrupt was finance. But beyond that, like in terms of media applications, music is first. It's going to be first for so many reasons. But that's what's exciting, is that like you, no matter what lens you understand it through, whether like you're a hedge fund guy that all of a sudden finds out that Bitcoin, you know, is probably the hardest money that's ever been created. Like if you're, you know, if you're an economist, like, and you're looking at Bitcoin, you're like, oh, this is actually the one of the greatest human achievements in terms of like, you know, in terms of like hard currency. Like it checks up more boxes than gold, essentially, and that's a true innovation. But then also, like, if you like the broader idea of decentralization, it can really be applied and manifested in just about any other system in which humans are interacting, whether that like value exchange, monetary interaction is pretty much the most direct and easiest to understand. And you know, like I give you money, you give me good or service. But you know, with music, for example, that good or service is like the tingling feeling you get in your stomach when the 808 hits or something like that. And the idea that like this technology can make more efficient the exchange of vibrations from a speaker, to the feeling that one gets in their stomach, and the ability to fund the person that's creating that vibration in the speaker. Like if you want to get really abstract with it, like it does create efficiencies in all of these different ways that we interact with each other. That could be in healthcare, legal, fucking biotech, probably, a lot of different things.
Sure.
Yeah, real estate. But it's not always going to be necessarily on the blockchain, or there's not necessarily going to be a token associated with it, so much as like the idea that sovereign entities should interact among each other instead of through centralized systems through which we are forced to commit all of our data and time and attention.
Can you take us, okay, so can you give like a little bit of some insight into what like decentralized music is? Like I'm thinking about an audience that doesn't know, that hasn't really dove into this space, but like follows the music business, which is like mostly what we've been covering. So can you kind of talk about, like, in your own words, like what is decentralized music?
Right. So I think it's a journey and not a destination, really. As is like journey, like decentralization is a process at this point, and it's been happening since like the advent of like you could say with music, like the ability, like at certain points, like there was the only people that could enjoy music were members of the aristocracy, right? They're the only people that could hire, obviously if you were a musician, you could create music for yourself, but like musicians could, would be performed. There weren't like necessarily tons of public performances of like large scale, like there are now, like kings and queens and fucking, members of the royal family, whatever, would pay to enjoy music, and those people would perform for them. You could say that it started as like people being able to play music for themselves, or for like their community and things like that, or I don't know, you could take it way far back, but in essentially like many people say decentralization broadly, like as a sociological movement, started at the advent of the printing press, when all of a sudden people of lesser means could take an idea, put it on paperwork, and disseminate that idea everywhere, right? So with recorded music, that was probably a similarly, like, whenever that happened, that was the first time like other people could enjoy music that weren't having to pay professional musicians. So it could start back there. But now essentially like music has begun to decentralize beyond that, in terms of like when the personal computer hit, PCs were in every home, and then all of a sudden there was software on those PCs that could create music. So it just lowered the barrier of entry for anybody that, like myself, that wanted to make music. I didn't have time or the attention span or the financial resources to pay for lessons for all of these different musical instruments that I grew up with. But all of a sudden, on my computer in my bedroom, I had access to the tools that used to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for professional studio musicians. And so what happened was that that potential met with the potential of distribution, which was the MP3. The MP3, and like there's a book about this called How Music Got Free. Free is a very good or very like powerful analogy or synonym for decentralized in many cases. But essentially, like the CD, the centralized recording industry would take music from a small group of people, recorded in a small amount of studios in New York or Los Angeles, and then create CDs that were in several factories all over the country that were then distributed globally. But everything had to go through these factories where these CDs were created. And one guy basically realized that he could take those CDs, he was a factory worker, and then basically rip them and then distribute them through the internet. And that's how like piracy basically found its way into the music distribution pipeline. They've been trying to solve that issue ever since, instead of embracing it. But essentially, I guess like the MP3 was what started to decentralize music distribution. Like it became very easy to push a song anywhere and everywhere within the click of a button. And that was also reflecting the fact that like anybody could create, basically you could create music on the computer that you then distributed it to the entire world. And that was when music really became totally decentralized. But the monetization and the channels for essentially remunerating those creators never really caught up to that, because the music industry spent the last 15 years, or prior to Spotify, had spent the 15 years, 20 years trying to make sure that didn't happen. And that was basically impossible. And that historically, if you look at technology, there's institutions that fight it and there's institutions that embrace it. The ones that fight it almost always lose. You basically can never put the genie back in the bottle. And so what's exciting is that now we're seeing, that's where cryptocurrency comes in. That's where decentralized networks of value exchange come in, is that now it's not that like the Audius or anybody else is making it easier to create or distribute music. It's always been that easy. The goal here is to make it so that anybody can create music and anybody can be paid for it, and anybody can pay anyone else for the music that they create, which isn't the case now, because though we are closer to a decentralized, like the current paradigm outside of Audius is very much closer to decentralized. Like, sure, you can upload a CD baby, anybody can do that, and then it can be on Spotify. But at the end of the day, you still have to go through Spotify. Audius creates a tool chain where you don't have to go through Audius necessarily. Audius is not a thing. We're not a company. We don't make money. We're a set of tools that allows any person to completely vertically integrate a distribution stack for their music and their content, which is exciting because we all know that artists right now are their own, they're their own promotional companies with their social media. They're their own graphic designers in many cases. They're their own music video directors when they create their own TikTok. They create their own music, but you push it through these other channels that then sell advertisements against it. And that's how Instagram makes money. That's how TikTok makes money. That's how your data is totally mined. We're all manipulated. This is how Donald Trump became president, is because we use these platforms and they're used against us. The idea of decentralization is that you become the platform yourself. And Audius is the tools that allows musicians to do that and to totally create the music within their own box, distribute it through their own channel without any intermediaries that are not only selling your data, but taking a cut. Because Audius, again, doesn't take a cut of any of the money. So it's just a natural evolution from, but Audius is just the natural and inevitable evolution in what has been happening for 15 to 20 years. But the goal with Audius is to actually pay people substantially more than they're being paid now, because of so many predators in the distribution pipeline that currently still exist.
Right. No, and that's an incredible historical background. So I really appreciate that. I think, how would you tell an artist, like, hey, put your music on Audius and here's why long term it's got more value for you?
Right. Yeah, I would say that like that's the thing. I think if people expect me to be like, Audius is the shit, I mean, I do think that, but like I think that people are like I get on a lot of calls where people expect me to be like, you should only put your music on Audius and here's why. Like, I'm a manager and I've worked in the music industry for a long time, and I don't believe that we're at the state yet where Audius is the only place you should be distributing your music yet. But I do think that things happen gradually, and change happens slower in the music industry than elsewhere. I think it's happening faster now, especially for Audius, than things have in the past. But like the idea is that if you really look at the Spotify's growth and you look at the way that the music industry is now finally making money, it doesn't necessarily seem sustainable to me. And this is the issue, is that like there's only so much attention that can be paid to so many artists, and there's hundreds of thousands of songs uploaded to SoundCloud or Spotify per day. And frankly, it's essentially created like a huge wealth gap in terms of streams. And that's fine if you can jump to the top of that pile.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, like, I think we're, and this is the American dream that's sold to many people across all kinds of ideologies. But like, you're probably not going to be Drake. Like, no matter how good your music is, like no matter how good your music is, you're almost like the odds are not in your favor in terms of you being Drake or Taylor Swift, and hence the odds are not in your favor of you making any money from streaming music ever, like under the current paradigm. And frankly, Audius is like, so first of all, there needs to be like a real like hard reset in terms of our expectations. And like, again, I think the ways that we hoist attention onto the idea of celebrity in general I think social media and the attention economy has a lot to do with that, and I think that's another big correction that's kind of underway. But as such, like there will be a middle class of people who are just creating across multiple channels, and I think that acceptance of that, I think, again, like there has to be like a lot of like social acceptance around the idea of not being a fucking celebrity, and that's the issue, is that like everybody thinks they want to be a fucking celebrity. I think we're gonna understand very quickly that that's not sustainable. It's not even fucking real. And there's nothing wrong with being a middle class musician that's paying your bills by creating music that people want to hear and that people will pay to see live and people will pay to listen to. Like, and so I think we are getting into kind of a more of a normalized idea around that, as you know, just the house of cards that is social media celebrity is beginning to fall in a very real way. Like influencers don't make money selling tummy tea anymore or whatever. Like they, you know, like like it's all kind of going away. Actually today, Instagram introduced subscription, which I think is super fucking great. I think it's one of the smartest things they could ever do.
What's going on with that?
So they're basically saying like, yo, you don't actually have to sell fucking bullshit. Like you don't need, maybe your content is good enough, you know? Like let's find out if your fans think your content is good enough. Because I think a lot of people would. I think a lot of people will pay to see Emily Ratajkowski's abs. You know? I think OnlyFans is a great example of this. Like OnlyFans, like I think OnlyFans is one of the most admirable and smartest and most beleaguered tech companies in the entire world. They have had everything stacked against them, and they've still become I think like $1 billion. Like, I think they're a unicorn, and they're not even in the fucking app store. Like that's crazy. They're a browser-based fucking media content company that like isn't even on mobile because Apple won't let them, which is another thing. But anyway, so sorry, I get tangential, but yeah, essentially, like I think Audius is going to be ahead of everybody in terms of being able to create a middle class and a community that you can get off zero, where we really want to solve the cold start problem for people by, you know, having means of communication, means of community building, and means of monetization around those kinds of things that allow people to get from, you know, 0 followers to, you know, being able to make $300 a month on their, you know, their streams. Maybe it's not per stream basis. It probably won't be, but there will be, you know, different ways to interact with people on Audius that eventually, you know, help ladder your way up to a more sustainable revenue stream. Do I think Audius needs to be the only revenue stream for major musicians or for like middle class musicians? No, you'll always have to go play shows. That's, you know, you should always have to play shows, but shows shouldn't, like, streaming shouldn't be the loss leader for you in terms of like what you're creating. It should be like the core focus. It's you know, it's an art form that predates the spoken word in many cases. Like, and many people would, like, music has been around for longer than, you know, the written word for sure. So like, I don't buy that, like, that should be like the thing that's free. I don't believe that at all. I just think that the tools haven't necessarily been introduced until what we're doing to be able to kind of monetize that.
With our technology, you would think like by now they'd have it together, just how to get people paid on time without jumping through hoops.
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously wow, my hair is doing things today. The technology exists, so it's very evident. It's just the issue is that like there's been hand holding and ring kissing going as this entire thing has been built. Like Daniel Ek is a pirate. Like Daniel Ek was one of the, you know, he created, like, I don't know if it was what.cd or whatever the other one was. He's basically a pirate, like among the creators of like Pirate Bay, that era. And basically he was like, oh, I think the only thing that I'm doing wrong here is it's hard for people to play the music and there's a lag. You know, he's like has an entire world's catalog of music and there's a lag. So like his big innovation was like making it so when you hit play, the music starts. Like that's an insane that's insane. And then he was like, oh, should I be on the rights to any of this? So like I have to, like, you know, work with the majors I have to build up enough distribution and then work with the majors so that they want to work with me. It's just how the music industry has always dealt with digital platforms. But like in doing so, they were like, hey, we're going to sue you into oblivion if you don't, you know, keep ASCAP and BMI alive, and also sign these non-competes. I don't have a lot of detail on this, but there's absolutely a fucking legal reason why Spotify doesn't sign artists. Like there's no reason they own the distribution channels.
Yeah, sure.
Like
they get pretty close to it too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that
Oh, yeah.
basically what they were going to see was a massive lawsuit on behalf of the majors for not doing that or something. I don't know. But essentially, like they created this thing, and then like now they're working with the majors, and I think that in many cases, like it's not even fair to the people that, you know, the major labels that invest so much time, energy, and resources into developing artists that then just sit at the bottom of one playlist and never get heard. And there's really no alternative for them. Like they just have to like suck it up.
I think as a consumer too, like I've gotten unbelievably tired of, you know, my Spotify playlists or like Spotify or, you know, major streaming services, basically because I just like I'm hearing the same music. You know, it's like becoming like a problem. Like that's why you have to go like just back to like NTS radio or something where you're just like, all right, cool, I'm listening to just something different or just exploring other channels. From like a consumer perspective, you know, what like, and I'm asking these questions because I know like the idea of like tokenomics and of like using platforms or decentralization within crypto is very much about benefiting the whole community. So from like a consumer perspective, what is the benefit to Audius? Obviously, if artists start adapting it in mass quantities and it starts to actually become the middle class, you're going to follow the artists, you're going to follow the creators. But is there like a benefit outside of that to consumers?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Yeah, I mean, like like you mentioned, discovery, and I think human discovery is the key there. Like we don't want. I mean, there's obviously a certain amount of like algorithmic recommendation for radio, and for like, you know, if you let one song play, it'll play something after that. But like the idea of like playlisting, like Spotify fucking clearly hates like user centric playlisting, right? Like it's like it could be front and center of their product, but like instead it's like this afterthought because they can't control it. And frankly, I think that, and it's highly likely they'll probably just kind of eventually put it in the closet and not have it be a thing at all.
What,
or
user
like not
centric
have
playlists? You don't think?
Yeah, like
yeah.
I mean, I like there's almost no social features on Spotify. Like,
Yeah.
and that's not because, I mean, these are the smartest people in the entire fucking world. Like some publicly traded company, you know, if they wanted, if they thought that more social features would benefit their bottom line, they would introduce it, but it's not the case. And that's where Audius comes in as a totally like completely differentiated alternative, because again, we don't make money. What's the only ways that Audius, the community, succeeds is if people are enjoying it.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, monetized curation on Audius, like being able to, like, and this is something that's probably far in the future, but the idea of being able to create a marketplace around curation where people are getting paid to add songs to playlists, and people are getting people have the ability to either listen to that playlist or not listen to that playlist because of whether they like it or not. And then artists have the ability to, you know, cut in curators because they have a promotional channel. That idea has always existed in music. It's just called payola, and it's been totally under the table, and it's downright illegal in radio. But that's only because there's never been a layer of transparency that's been a marketplace around it that's been or like, you know, that's been essentially like facilitated and encouraged, and, you know, regulated by the same way that all marketplaces are regulated. So I think that the idea of like human curation is very exciting, because again, I think, and this is something I brought up, and I would love to be corrected on this. Definitely people have strong feelings about it in New York, but in LA, like I don't think there was a song of there was no like BLM song. Like when we were all marching, there was no like that moment where there was this one song, right? And I don't know if that has to do with like just general like lack of consensus around what's good in terms of music. In New York, it was definitely Dior, but that's not a political song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't know if we get an NWA in 2022, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that, like, I don't know, like it doesn't sit with everybody, and hence it maybe doesn't find anyone.
I'm saying like because music's become a little bit more passive.
Yeah, exactly. And that, and also there's no community around it. You know, white people in the Midwest might not be wanting to listen to a protest song. But like everybody that was, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of people in the streets in LA, and there was, you know, a community there. There was a shared set of ideals, a shared set of values, and there was no soundtrack. And I think that's interesting because it's like, I don't know, it seems like there is no means of really coalescing around one idea musically because everything is so disparate and everything is just so spread apart. And I think that benefits the platforms. I don't necessarily think that benefits listeners, and even if it does benefit listeners, like it doesn't benefit society at large, right? Like there's no social conversation around music anymore at all. There's no like, there's no activist music that's at least coming to like the top of it.
You think some of that has to do with like DJs traditionally, or people, you know, are pushing records, like respected DJs have respected voices, and now we have DJs kind of behind the curtains. You know, we have like groups of people telling us, hey, like if you know what it's like managing an artist. We manage an artist that's in this lane, you're fighting really hard to get seen on like these types of playlists within major DSPs. Like I need those types of looks, and then I need to perform well to move up, right? And the people that are controlling that, it's like a couple people, you know,
globally.
globally, and might have great taste. Like I'm not knocking these people and what they do in their taste, but I'm saying like that's too narrow. We're all too narrow when it comes to just choosing something that fits just in this lane, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no way that those people can divorce themselves and their backgrounds and their experiences from the way they do their jobs, and that's fine. Like that's they shouldn't have to, but also they shouldn't be empowered to like literally like kind of puppet master the social discourse, which is what music can do. It's literally like 10 people that like control what is the vast majority of music that's heard on Earth now, and that's fucking crazy. Like that's really crazy.
It's crazy,
and that is centralized music, right?
Yeah.
And I think those people all are very well-intentioned people. I don't think those people are like, you know, like I'm gonna sink the ship that is, you know, a global society. Like I don't think that's what the intention here is, but inevitably, like it can't, those 10 people, those 20 people, whether it's 300 people, can't represent the values, the ideas, the experiences, the stories of everybody on Earth that should be listening to music and benefiting from it. And that's what's kind of crazy, right? Is like that goes back to like what we were talking about earlier. Like I don't think there need to be billionaires in the world, just generally in terms of personal wealth. I also don't think there need to be artists with billions of streams. Think about that. There's only how many billions? There's like 8 billion people on Earth or something like that. And there's like Drake has like multiple songs with over 1 billion streams. Like that's fucking crazy. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like these global like pillars of attention, there's no way that can be healthy. And so like I think decentralization is manifested there by like just the like large scale democratization of like the people that we're paying attention to, the stories that we're listening to, and the ideas behind them, many of which will not be comfortable or happy to hear for a lot of people. And that's why we're going to have to get used to turning those people off, not necessarily canceling them and removing them from the world at large, but just being like, cool, I don't fuck with your music or your ideas, like I'm not going to listen to you, instead of the algorithms right now that currently exist that put those people to the top and make it seem like they're representative of like a huge social, you know, like most people aren't anti-vaxxers. Granted, there's a third of the people in America that aren't vaccinated, but like a lot of people aren't, like, you know, like maybe that's a bad example, maybe we can take that out, but like I don't think like the vast majority of people in America are like hateful racist people. Yet this by you know, like if you were paying attention to social media, if you're paying attention to traditional media, like you would be led to believe like it's us versus them, like in terms of like, you know, in terms of like 1-to-1, there's like the woke versus the racist. Like I don't actually think that's the case. I think that serves the power structures, but like it would be great. Like I moved to Mexico, so I didn't have to fucking look at Twitter, the same Twitter. Like it throws it in our faces. Like you should be able to listen to the kind of music that you want, subscribe to the ideas that you want, and have that be enough, and have that, like, have your community have a social dialogue, and I think that will elucidate a lot more positive conversations than it will negative ones. Again, it's just like it's weird that like we're in two silos all of the time, and I think that is reflected in music by being like, there's the Drake silo, the Taylor Swift silo, the Marshmello silo, and there's nothing else you get. There's no other ideas musically.
Because I do think, like when you was talking about the social, like how people care so much about celebrity and social media, but I do think if it was easier for a lot of the artists who just love music and love to do it and have a community of people who really buy into them and like their merch, if it was easier for them to be compensated correctly, then they wouldn't try so hard to be a celebrity and try so hard to like go on TikTok and do a dance and like make a hit record. And it's like,
Exactly,
because the hit record is really dictated by these institutions and people who don't even know how to make music.
You're trying to game
the system.
Like if we can get those.
Yeah, and I've written about this, and I think it's something that like we don't necessarily talk about in music so much as like other people talk about in other media verticals, but it's so true. It's like dude, social media is a fucking disease, and the people that it preys on the most are people that don't have alternatives in terms of like the ways that they elevate themselves out of the situation that they're in. Like it used to be rap music, but now it's face tattoos. Now it's like doing Xanax on fucking TikTok, or this is like I'm washed. Like I'm talking about like the 2017 to 2020 like era of rap music. Like it was really sad how like there's almost zero generational banger songs that came out of that. There's a lot of fucking casualties. There's a lot of people that were preyed on by major labels because they had the attention. Just the music was just like a byproduct of it, right? It was like how do we monetize the fact that this kid has like 7 million Instagram followers because he does wild shit and his face looks crazy because there's no one telling this person that like how to be a constructive member of society. And so like how do we squeeze every penny out of this person instead of like maybe providing them the tools to like the idea that Boonk could go viral once and then make enough money from that, like Instagram subscription, right? Like I don't remember if anybody remembers Boonk, but like say if he was on Instagram subscription, and he ran it for like 3 months, right, and did that crazy shit that he was doing, and made enough money to, dare I say, buy Bitcoin. Back then would have been, he'd be doing pretty well right now. But also like go to school or something like that. Like if there was people that were pushing, if there was like incentives or people in his life or like even just means of doing it, but like you're like, yo, now you did that, like you could actually do something productive with your life instead of like going down this attention like dark spiral.
Super dark spiral. And like when I see the Instagram subscription stuff, just being somebody who's like been paying attention like very minorly to crypto space since 2017, but really since like most other people since the pandemic, when I've just been sitting at home diving in and going down the wormhole. Like I see the Instagram stuff and you see like the Twitter profile picture verification, right? But we see the Instagram subscription stuff. And I think like there so much of this has to be driven by the fear of what, and obviously Instagram's owned by Facebook or Meta, right? Point being that it's Meta. How much of this is being driven by the fact to like, we have to keep up with this new direction things are going, right? Like it's like you said, the genie's out the bottle. The same way like Audius is inevitable, right? When you really think about it. The same thing of like Instagram being like, they didn't want to pay the average creators that were driving all this value. Like they have, they feel that they have to, right? And of course, it's going to be a positive thing. And, okay, people are going to start to make money, hopefully. But it's being driven by the idea that people are going to, like you said, be able to become their own platform. And that being drive their own revenue in directly, right? And that's like a very much a thing I think we see in Web3 or, in this like modern sense of decentralization.
Yeah. And I think that's like these are all, and it's all, again, like I think we have to think of it as an inevitability because like I don't think OnlyFans was created by people that are like deep Bitcoiner fucking Burning Man, ketamine addict, decentralization, decentralists. Like, these aren't the people that are like, postulating on like what a borderless society looks like. But like, they actually took a more actionable step towards that than Facebook, than many other people have, because they created a disintermediated media pipeline from, if you want to, you can deride the creators on OnlyFans as much as you like. Like, I think that it's one of the most important technological innovations
100% agreed.
Like of my lifetime, only because of what it doesn't do. And what it doesn't do is involve anybody except for the creator and the fan. And,
and the platform takes a small fee. It is what it is. But like, when you think of like most, like when you think of like, all right, let's just take Howard Stern, right? Like, this is always my model. He started interviewing a certain type of creator, right? And super controversial. Adult film stars, porn stars, and of course, like the comedy aspect, right, brought all this in. But like, OnlyFans opened up this model just because it had a certain type of creator, which I completely respect. Like, I have nothing against the type of creators that are on there, mainly adult film stars or, whatever, sex workers, whatever it is. That model will evolve into every type of creator, right? Like, it just starts with the people that are like, this is the way for me to get paid, and that's what I have to do, right? And there is no other way to get paid, really, for the type of creator I am.
I mean, the first video that was on the internet was porn. Like, it always actually is porn, music, and cats. Really drive innovation in media. And if you look at crypto, in 2018, the first big waves were it was called Spank Chain, which is essentially like trying to be Pornhub on chain. Had great traction. Crypto Kitties, and then a lot of music startups like Ujo, Tune, Emanate. All of those came out of that first wave. And then obviously DeFi was, that I don't think anybody saw that happening to the level that it did. But like, Bitcoin, I mean, crypto was essentially meant to disrupt in its first wave, meant to disrupt finance. It was designed to do so. But then in the second wave, like, you have porn, music, and cats. And that's exactly what happened with broadband. When broadband happened, like, first videos on the internet like really were porn, and the first memes, the first like viral, like most shared content was cats. And the first media that was like shared at scale was music. So it's not that crazy that we're seeing it happen again now, but like, it's just a much, I guess, like, that's why, like, when people are like, oh, Web3, I'm like, Web3 is not gonna do what, like, Web3 might do what mobile did, but decentralization is going to do what the fucking internet did. Like, I think that, not to say that mobile wasn't one of the biggest, most profound innovations of our lifetime, but there's only one thing that really predates it that is as impactful and is like paradigm shifting and world changing, and that was the actual advent of the internet. And I do think that's where I think Web3 undersells it. I think decentralization is like a huge fucking social movement that like basically completely obliterates every construct we've ever had in terms of the ways that we interact with institutions and the way we interact with each other. I don't think that can be undersold. And I just think people aren't zooming out far enough in a lot of ways in reference to when they're saying Web3. And I really do think OnlyFans is like one of the first and most profound like movers in the space.
Do you think that the pandemic is what kind of sped up the mainstream of like crypto being in the mainstream, and just people being more passionate about the space, and people being like just looking at an alternative for life, period? Do you think that sit down made everybody like,
I think so. Like,
shift?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things, a lot of which are unfortunate. So like Bitcoin came out of the financial crisis that cost my mom the home I grew up in. Like, basically, like, Bitcoin came out of a pervasive, but also like the final straw and like the lack of trust of institutions that are supposed to protect us, which is the global banking system. Like, banks are supposed to protect your wealth, and they literally robbed hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people you know, the thing that the underpinnings of generational like wealth and security and safety. From that, you know, that being a pervasive theme of all of crypto and things, I think that the pandemic was another basically a huge indicator that like the institutions that we place all of our trust in are fundamentally incapable of protecting us. Like if anybody thinks about the pandemic as like an individual level, like we're in this pandemic because certain people didn't get vaccinated or certain people didn't wear their masks. Like sure, that's true to a certain extent. I say this as somebody who's vaxxed and boosted. Like I don't want anybody to get that fucked up. But like we cannot absolve these fucking massive, like the people that are supposed to protect us did not, because they cannot coordinate on a massive level. Like I'm like all of the like if the right hand was talking to the left hand in fucking February of 2020, we wouldn't be in this fucking mess. But it just didn't happen. So that said, like I think that like going into the pandemic, where a lot of people were like, okay, fuck these people. Like they actually don't care about us. They don't know what the fuck is going on. Is it possible that as much that you know they you know is it possible that I might know more about my financial future than the people that I've entrusted it with, which are the, you know, the stock market and major banks and the financial advisors and all these people. You're seeing that in millennials right now. Like I think it's most millennials now would rather invest on behalf of themselves. And this is, you know, Robinhood may be the only fans of finance in a lot of ways. You know, it's creating a direct relationship between people's financial futures and their, you know, current financial situation and facilitating that. So I think Robinhood had a lot to do with it. And I also think that in terms of the proliferation and the like the huge amount of attention that's being paid to crypto right now, the Fed's fucking printing trillions of dollars. Like everything is a bubble right now. If you're into watches and you look at the charts for watches, they're fucking full on hockey stick, just like every other market. Real estate's out of the park. Places like LA, Boise, where I'm from, the most fastest growing and most violently like supercharged real estate bubble in the country. So, you know, and crypto has a very, very low barrier to entry, higher than some things, but also like there's just a lot of there's a lot of white space. It's like there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of things that you know, there's a lot of like people, I have friends who made millions on a fucking token called Cum Rocket. Like that wouldn't have
we were
like
tipped off to that pain. Don't forget, we were tipped off.
I mean, I don't want to talk about the fact that I owned SHIB back in like January of last year. I'd be, you know, worth hundreds of millions.
Not even on this call.
Yeah. So that said, like you know, and like that's the thing is like meme coins. Like I think that like I was talking about somebody who like had a very strong opinion about meme coins, and I'm like, dude, like all traditional finance does, all hedge funds do is analyze like macroeconomic trends, right? And like the entire world is trending towards fucking absurdity. Like look at the fucking Tiger King. Like all we have to believe in right now is like memes, is lols. Like you know, like 300,000 fucking hundreds of thousands of people died from a fucking preventable illness, like in America. In like, what is not ridiculous about the situation that we're in, and why shouldn't my friends make billions of dollars on something called Cum Rocket? Like everything is fucking ridiculous now. I mean, Donald Trump. Look at Donald. I think I've effectively like blocked that period out of my memory. That guy was a fucking meme. Like everything about our world became turned on its head since 2016.
Yeah,
and so fucking ridiculous
of like the status of how everybody feels. They've been around forever too. I mean, you know, like
so why not like have that reflected in our financial, like our the world of finance? And I think that like Cum Rocket is a fucking middle finger to anybody who thinks that the world of traditional finance isn't fucking completely manipulated. It's just that like
it could be done, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Like and same with and same with AMC and fucking GameStop, right? Like that. I don't think that people, I mean, maybe they do or maybe they don't. That was one of the most important financial occurrences of our lifetimes, is when a bunch of fucking people on Reddit were like, no, actually fuck you, Like, we're going to throw the entire fucking global stock
We're gonna
market into a fucking
right.
tailspin around just because now there's a coordination layer. Like, that's the thing, is that like there was no coordination layer that was sufficient enough to stop COVID from becoming a global pandemic. But fucking a bunch of idiots on the internet can create billions of dollars of fucking value by using Reddit as a coordination layer for financial systems. So I think that's where crypto comes in, is like people are just like, oh, like we can do this. Like you guys don't know anything that we don't. And thank you for all the trillions of dollars of stimulus. Now that we can just fucking play on our little hilarious checkerboard that is Cumrocket, that is SHIB, that is Doge. Like, I think so. I think that had a lot to do with it. You know, it was just like everything was there, and people had a lot of time on their hands, and then the government was just like, here, play with this fucking monopoly money. Like, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we haven't even begun to see how, you know, how the pendulum is going to swing in the opposite direction, which it fucking will. Like, I mean, we're obvious, like inflation's on the tip of everybody's tongue right now. We haven't even begun to see fucking like hyperinflation yet. I do think we will.
Yeah,
I basically think the dollar is going to zero. I'm kind of a pessimist. I hope that's not the case, but
hopefully not. But it's just
hopefully
like,
not. But I don't really
like, can you stop? Can they stop? Like, can they? I mean, they've gone so far. I don't know if we can stop.
Guys, I don't mean to cut this off, because like I have like literally 2 or 3 pages of questions. I really do, and I'm asking openly, like I want you to come back in a couple months, and
yeah, for sure,
because I think we can dive way deeper into just even Audius too. Like I think we can talk a lot more about why artists and artist community need to care about this, managers, right? Like why like internal teams need to care about all of this. And I just want to dive in more, but I apologize. I gotta jump for something.
It's okay.
But Clayton, this is like, there's gonna be content comes out of this, and like just the shit you're saying that I didn't even think we would be able to take and like give to people. Yeah,
totally. I mean, we can edit this into 2 episodes too, or we can take two interviews or whatever and make one episode. I definitely got real out there, but that's how.
No, there's a lot of good stuff, and I'm reading my questions, and I'm like, they can't go unanswered. So I would love to have you back, and I apologize that I got to jump.
No, it's all good. Yeah, let's do it again very soon.
All right, cool. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
Peace.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
All right.